Hey everyone, welcome back to All Things Private Practice. I am joined today by Megan Hale, and she is a scaling strategist for established social entrepreneurs who are changing the world through their work, and the founder of the 2% Pledge, a social initiative helping more entrepreneurs build a sustainable give back into their business. She has a background in psychotherapy and brings a deeply holistic lens to business growth, and has been known for helping her clients integrate their wisdom into cohesive offers that create more ease and flow. She got her start in the business space by helping entrepreneurs understand the ins and outs of sustainable cash flow design with her DreamMoney framework. Her newest venture is building the DreamMoney App, a platform that's bringing her entire cash flow methodology to more users, providing the key revenue planning tools and business finance insights entrepreneurs need to sustainably scale. So, tell the audience what the hell that means to them who are listening.
I love it. Well, I'm so excited to be joining you. As you mentioned, my background is in therapy, and I first made the shift from therapy to coaching back in 2015. So it's been almost 10 years now. And for the first 3 years, I was really struggling to get that business to take off because I don't know about you or any of your listeners, but in grad school, I was taught to know people and not necessarily to know business. And I knew that I wanted to help, but I didn't know how to create sustainable growth for myself at all. And so I had to figure a lot of this stuff out on my own. And the Dream Money framework that we're going to be talking about today was actually a big component of that, of really being very lost, getting ready to go into one of the hardest years of my personal life, wondering if it even made sense to stay in my business that next year because things have been so hard, and really needing an intuitive way to think about my money, get clear on my numbers. What am I trying to get my business to do? And how am I going to be able to do that in the most sustainable way possible? And those questions became the foundation for everything that I teach today, of really helping people understand sustainable business design, where you're able to make the money that you want to make with the time and the energy that you have available. Because going into that very, very hard year, I only had about like 10 hours a week to work. I was getting ready to become a mama to two under two while I partner deployed for 6 months. So I now have a lot on my shoulders. And so sustainable business that year looked very different with less capacity than ever before. So I was able to create one signature scalable offer that generated one whole year sustainable cash flow. And that radically shifted everything, which is the foundation for everything I've stepped into since.
It's pretty amazing. And your story is, not unique to a lot of people listening, where they want to create more revenue. They want to create more income. They want to obviously spend less time in their businesses. However, like you mentioned, and we so often talk about it on this podcast, grad school did not prepare us typically to become business owners. And they kind of talked about like shying away from it. And there's so much like money trauma and money shame in the therapy profession. Yes. And it probably is more so in the therapy profession than others, but I think a lot of people can just relate to money shame and money trauma in general.
Yes.
So can you talk to us about working through that, how that leads you to like creating a second app where you are, like you mentioned before we started recording, kind of in this whole new world now, right? Like I imagine that feels really surreal sometimes.
It's very surreal. I remember like in grad school, so many of my professors would be like, you don't get into this field to make money. And that was so drilled into my head that when I became a business owner, I said, but I need to make some money. Like, I'm not trying to become like the richest person in the world, but we still have to make some money in order to, survive and to live, and for this business venture to even make sense. And I was lucky in the sense that when I did my supervision for all my LPC hours, I actually did that supervision in a private practice. And so I was able to learn, a few business skills. So when I launched my private practice, I didn't take insurance. I went cash only right away. I did sliding scale fees, and I kind of figured that part out. And I was lucky to set that real fairly easily and quickly, mostly because by some grace of God, I had a way of making my Psychology Today profile like stand out for the people I really wanted to serve. And people came to me because I was, really opening up a very inclusive space in a more, conservative town. So that was really great for me. But then when I moved into the online space, it was a very different animal because I just inundated with lots of messages around what it meant to be successful and how much money I should be pursuing and how I was undercharging and I must not value myself and my expertise. Like that's when I first learned about money mindset for the first time entering the online space. And when I heard that concept for the very first time, I was like, oh, there's some stuff here for me. And I had never been aware of it before. And that's when I started to really look at what are my personal beliefs around money, what have I been taught to believe, et cetera. And it wasn't until I had that breakthrough on my business where I had sustainable cash flow for, a full 12 months that I realized I had been in this fallacy that more money was going to create financial security for me, where I was going to, like, my nervous system was going to relax. And when that didn't automatically happen, I got really curious around what else is going on here. And that's when I started to become more aware of like transgenerational money stories and how those were impacting my views of money. I started to become more aware of attachment styles with money. Like so many things started to open up for me that year. And so much money healing happens because I committed to looking at my money every single day for 365 days, at least for 5 minutes a day. That was because going through 2018, with so much of my personal life feeling very chaotic of having, two young kids and my partner away, meeting with my goals around money became like my anchor point of like, okay, what is in my power to control? What is here for me? But that was a deep exploration of really understanding my own stories, my own conditioning, family stories, spiritual stories, like all of the ways, society conditions us to think about money. And even as a healer, what it means to make good money and be helping people, and that those two things can coexist. And it was profound for me. And that's actually when I made the shift of like, I think that I need to step into this my space and start helping other entrepreneurs do the same because I knew I wasn't alone. Right. And that really became, the whole framework that I was building that year, of really understanding my numbers and my margins and my revenue plan and also managing my money. That's starting to build so much more trust and confidence that I knew what I was doing and that I could be trusted to earn more money. Like I knew I could handle it and direct it. And that whole platform, I was in a spreadsheet for years and years and years. And I'd always had the dream of trying to get into software where it could help more people and have more functionality. And last year, I actually finally started taking steps in that direction to start to build that dream. And so now I am a brand new founder of a startup that I never in a million years thought that I would be. And it very much feels like I'm at the starting line and the beginning of a whole new business venture, which is it's interesting. So I'm seeing this whole new identity start to come online for me.
That's pretty inspiring for sure. Hold on one second. Let me get my volume up. Can you hear me? Perfect. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's inspiring because I imagine back in grad school, you didn't foresee this.
No. Maybe it's like going into the fintech space. Absolutely not.
Right. Yeah. And I've seen your journey on social media with like pitching and the meetings that you've had to prepare for and how you've had to show up in those situations and being a female-owned business and investor and startup. And it's really incredible to watch. So I want to give you a huge congratulations on that because
thank you.
I think we all have like these wonderful ideas, but so often we have these narratives where it's not for us, or I don't know how to do it, or I'm not capable of doing the thing or pursuing the goal. And I like that you said something about like getting really comfortable with your money on a daily basis and getting really familiarized with the narratives and the stories that we have behind money. Because I think there, like I said before, there's such an association with the term, right? You say money to a person in a healthy profession. What is the immediate reaction? It's probably like cringing, feeling uncomfortable, feeling ashamed to even talk about it. Maybe there's cultural stuff there. Maybe there is some really intense poverty/money trauma wounding that has happened in the past as well. So it all culminates, right? But I really like that you said something that we talk about so often on here, which is that you can be helpful. You can help a lot of people and you can make money. Both of those things can coexist. Yes. And for a lot of people, they still really struggle with that mentality, however.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember before doing, I would say the grand majority of my healing work, I remember having thoughts of like, why does money even have to exist? Like I was so mad about it because it just felt like it was this thorn in my side that was almost a hindrance of like, I knew that I've had to figure out the money stuff if I was going to be successful at helping people and having a viable business, while simultaneously wishing that it didn't have to be a part of the conversation. And one of the most profound things that happened in 2018 is I started to notice, like, when I was sitting down daily, money wasn't changing because money was consistent. In fact, it was the most consistent thing that year, while everything else was wild. And some days I would sit down and meet my money. I'd feel really, really anxious of like, well, what am I going to find? What am I going to do? And I was like, that's interesting because nothing with money has changed. And then other days I would sit down and like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to look at numbers. There's this avoidance coming up of like, and what I realized was I was trying to establish some internal emotional control. And I was oscillating between this anxious and avoidant attachment style with money. And I also had the awareness that I didn't really have a nourishing, supportive, positive relationship with money. And that's when I kind of started to reflect on how I had healed other relationships in the past. And me and my dad had a very conflictual relationship as a teenager. We had different love languages, and we both read that book back in the day. And it was such a huge connector for me to see his love through a different lens.
Right.
And for some reason, I started to look at money through that lens of saying, oh, I'm actually wanting money to show up for me in a way that is in my love language. So what does it look like for me to get some of those inputs from money right now? So for instance, like quality time is big for me. So how can I use this time I'm meeting with my money in a quality way? How could I make that feel better for me? So being really mindful of my thoughts. I'm thinking about like words of affirmation, how I could start layering those into money. So like I really started nourishing this relationship with money as if it were a person that completely changed everything. And I'm starting to feel much more secure in my attachment with money as a result.
I love that. That's a great perspective take on something that I don't think we talk about money that way very often in society. I mean, again, feels like a dirty word to a lot of people. And I like that you're reframing it from an attachment-focused perspective. So that's really unique. Give the audience an example. Like when you say, okay, so my love language is quality time, and I spent quality time with money. What does that mean and look like?
Yeah, so I think one of the first things I clued in on is that when I would sit down to spend time with my money, it was actually horrible. I hated it. It was not like fun or enjoyable at all. So what does it look like to actually create time that does have those positive bids that are showing up in a relationship cycle? And so for me, I noticed that I would come to those moments, those meetings with money, already feeling shameful, already feeling like a financial failure, already feeling like just almost like bracing for how money was about to make me feel. And if we even think about that from a relationship dynamic perspective, if that's the energy we're bringing to a conversation, we haven't even started yet. We're already on guard. We're already on the defense. So how do we need to shift our energy and our emotional well-being so we're in the best headspace to have a fruitful conversation? So I started to apply some of just my own like therapeutic techniques, honestly, of grounding myself and also starting to weave in like positive regard. Like money is not here to shame me. Where did that come from? Why do I believe that that's how money is about to make me feel? And then starting to challenge that idea. What if money is here to cheer me on? What if it's here to tell me how well I'm doing? What if it's here to give me clarity on the next step? What if it's a partner that's already on my side? That, I think, was the ultimate game changer because up until this point, I had seen me and money at odds.
Right. That's a huge point. That's a huge shift for sure. I also kind of like you keep using avoidant and anxious attachment verbiage. And I imagine that for a lot of you listening, your attachment style to money is avoidant. Like, I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to open my bank account. I'm not going to pay attention to where it's going, how it's coming in. That's not a strategy, right? Like that's just, that's certainly not helping in these situations. So I know I've been there before when I've been struggling with money stuff where I've been like, I'm not even going to look. Like, I don't even want to know. I don't want to know how much I have right now. I don't want to know how much is going out, coming in. And I think that for a lot of people, that's probably a default coping mechanism and strategy when it comes to the finances side of things. So you've worked through that. You start to build these programs. I know you've done like retreats and like masterminds and courses and lots of cool things around this framework. But now it's really like, leveled up another tier where it's like, I'm going to take this idea and this framework into the app space. Can you tell us about just the emotional side of that process?
Yeah. One thing that I'll say is I had to give myself a lot of permission to even start teaching this framework because there was a lot of stories of like, who am I to teach this?
Right.
My background is in therapy and coaching. Right? Like, what is it that I know about money?
Yep.
And it kind of felt like it was an obstacle or it was a deterrent to when I could raise the conversation. But when I gave myself permission to start teaching it, I really had to say, actually, that's my greatest gift. Because I don't approach money from a financial background. I approach it in a way that is much more accessible and welcoming and therapeutic in a sense that it helps other people who also don't have financial background, like find a place to have a conversation about money that's doable for them. So for anybody who's listening who feels like they've gained some wisdom and it feels like that who am I's are showing up, like really, really look at the gift that you're bringing to this conversation in your unique lens. Because if I would never have such a chat space, we would never be where we are right now, building, a multi-million-dollar software company. Okay. And we're at the very beginning stages right now. So please hear that. Like I put $50,000 into this company. It's not even generating revenue yet. But even being able to be in that place with money where there's so much money safety, there's so much risk tolerance of investing at that level, because I know what we can do with that to get it off the ground. Right. And business takes risks. Like you have to get comfortable with building capacity to take risks and trusting yourself. I wish that there could be guarantees of like every single dollar we spend is going to come back. But, I've been in business for 10 years and that's not how it always works. And that's okay. It doesn't mean anything about you. Like we're all learning as we go. Yep. So when I first started teaching the framework, I remember wondering like, this has helped me, but can it help others? And am I creating something that's flexible and adaptable enough that everybody can go through the same process and get their own unique outcomes? And when I started teaching it, the feedback was just so positive of like, I've never thought about my money from this perspective. I have such a deeper connection and meaning between the numbers I'm pursuing. Because I think one of the things that makes the Dream Money framework unique is that most of us are pursuing like 10K months or 20K months or whatever that number is for you, right?
Right.
What the Dream Money framework does is that actually helps you calculate like down to the dollar specific anchored revenue goals that make sense for your life, your business, and your financial needs. And so when I calculated what I call my good, better, best goals for the first time in 2017, I've been pursuing some random 6-figure business for 3 years. And when I calculated my best goal, it was like 96,476. It was close to 6 figures, but it wasn't 6 figures at the time. And for some reason, seeing that number, it made me realize, I've been pursuing somebody else's definition of financial success that actually isn't totally needed for what my definition of financial success is this next year. And I think having just those meaningful numbers it helps you ground down into what you're wanting for your own life and business. You're shutting out the noise. And then you get to ask yourself much more strategic questions like, well, how am I going to reach this number in the most sustainable way possible? That's where all of our revenue planning tools come in. Right. I started teaching this for the first time in 2018, got good reviews. Then I taught it again in 2019 for free, like just still iterating on this, like getting it down pat so it can work for lots of different people. Put it on the market for the first time in 2020, and we had a really successful launch with that. And then I followed a business mentor's advice to take it onto the market and only put it in my other programs at the time. And that was not necessarily like a bad decision, but it wasn't until last year that I actually brought it back to the market and allowed it to be available for the first time. And now it's like ready to go into its next iteration of like, the spreadsheets are great. Like you can get access to spreadsheets right now, but what my vision for this is we need more functionality. I want more reporting features for our users to always know what's happening with your money, what's going on with your money, to be able to tell like where your revenue is coming from. So you know where to spend more of your time as a business owner and really understand how to manage your money so it's doing what you want it to do, and also building that financial confidence that so many of us need. That's building that nervous system regulation. So that's where the software is coming in to fill the gaps that we can't do with spreadsheets, and then also take it so much further for how we're helping business owners with their cash.
It's impressive. That's really cool. Like to hear you say it like that. And it really gives a really comprehensive idea and understanding of what you're trying to create, opposed to just saying like the DreamMoney app, where someone might hear that and say, what the hell is that? Right. And ultimately, I think it's really unique. It's really special. You're obviously very passionate about this. And that kind of shines through in not only your content, but just even having this conversation. So it's really awesome.
So healing for me, and for everyone, I never forgot to mention, this is one big component. So DREAM is actually an acronym. It stands for money that's deliberate, reliable, easeful, abundant, and meaningful. So how can we step into these 5 key pillars? And, our software is really bringing all of those tools to do that. But to answer your question more fully around what it means to be a beginner in this whole founder space, I know the world of small business because I've been doing that for a decade, but the startup world is very, very different. Like a startup is not a lifestyle type business. It's like you go after investors and people investing millions of dollars into your company, and you're the CEO founder who's like the whole path is very different and fast and big. And I didn't realize that that's what I was building when I started off with all of this, And so even just saying yes to stepping into that world and starting to embrace this new part of myself, I'm starting to see just a whole new world of business open up, a whole new world of possibility. And it's been interesting because I know you've followed probably along the story of like what it took for us to win this grant and like all the obstacles we had to go through. And just to get to that, it's taken 10 years to get to this starting line, right? So we're now at the beginning all over again. But I'm so grateful for the entrepreneurial experience that I'm bringing to this next chapter, because I looked at some of these other founders. It's their first business venture ever. We're probably entirely overwhelmed, So I'm very grateful that it took 10 years to get to this new starting line, but I feel ready and prepared in a way that I know I wouldn't have been had I started on this path from day one.
I love that. That's a great message for people listening, because those of you listening who are like, who the hell am I to do this thing? Or that idea feels too big. Megan definitely did not have that idea out of grad school, right? Yeah. So like we talked about, when did you graduate grad school?
Oh gosh, 2011.
Yeah. So in 2011, Megan is not sitting there thinking like, yeah, fast forward 13 years and this is where I'm going to be. Yeah. So I think it's all about taking that risk, right? And really pursuing the things that you feel really passionate about, that feel aligned with your values, that you want to pursue. I definitely like think about that a lot. I like to do timeline, like zoom outs a lot of the time. And when I'm thinking like, I'm not accomplishing enough, I'm not doing enough, I don't feel like I'm where I need to be. Ultimately, I'm like, in 2015, I was in grad school, like fucking off, like really not thinking about any of that. I was just like, can I pass research methods? Right. And if I do, can I get a job in community mental health? And that will be my end goal and my finish line. And like that will give me security emotionally and financially, which was certainly not true. And fast forwarding 9 years from that, it's like, wow, it all starts with that one decision. It all starts with that like habit forming behavior. And it comes with a lot of ups and downs, and it definitely comes with a lot of self-doubt. But for you to even put yourself in this position and to continuously pursue it and now like establish your footing and say like, this is where I belong. I'm here. I'm taking up this space. I think that's really powerful. So congratulations on everything you're doing so far and what you're about to accomplish.
Thank you so much. I love exactly what you said. Like I haven't connected with 2011 me in a hot minute. And I need to have a conversation with her. And I'm like, girl, like, look what all has happened.
I mean, it's amazing, right? Like I said this at my Italy conference when I was on the stage I did like the zoom out exercise. Do I ever think 2015 me, 2012 me, when I stopped gambling with my gambling addiction, like all of the things in my life, do I ever fast forward and think I'm standing on a stage in an entire medieval Italian village that I rented to host a summit for 100 mental health entrepreneurs? And the answer is like, fuck no, absolutely not. So it's just amazing what can happen. Even that decision to like leave your community mental health job and start your private practice is a risk. It is worth pursuing. And then you kind of build off of those risks and you develop that risk tolerance. Yes. So I like that you said that about like, this is not your first entrepreneurial venture going into this space. And something that sets you apart is also having that mental health background, right? So I know so many of you listening are like, I only think with this degree in social work or counseling, I can only do one thing. But that's not true. And your skills are applicable in so many different ways, in so many different arenas.
So, like, I'm so passionate about mental health therapists getting out there because your wisdom is so needed. And you have such a holistic way of seeing things because of the way that you've been trained to just hold lots of different variables at once. And you're looking for how they connect. You're always connecting the story and how does all of this make sense and how I'm going to help someone move out of this. Like those skills can and just the empathy that we have and just the way we can create safe space for people. Like every single person in the world needs those skills.
Absolutely. Couldn't say it better myself. Well, Megan, thank you for coming on. Congrats on everything. Please tell the audience where they can find what you're doing.
Yes. So the best place to go is we have a calculator we've already developed. It's just there to give you one, clarity around your minimum viable revenue. So your minimum viable revenue is going to be a unique to you number that funds 7 key financial needs that creates financial stability in your business. And I'm a firm believer every single entrepreneur needs to know this number because this informs your sales goals, your price points, like so many big things start to move from there. So if you want to find out that number for you, you can go to app.meganhale.co, so CO. You're going to be asked to put in 4 unique numbers that are custom to your life and business, and then we're going to calculate your minimum viable revenue for you in less than 5 minutes, and that's all at 100% free. And then I will be moving lots of other big things out into the world as like DreamMoney is starting to become its own company and grow its legs. We'll have a fundraising campaign that we're doing December 27th of 2024. For people to be our early backers, our early adopters of the software that we're building so we can make this dream come to life. So be on the lookout for that too.
It's really awesome. And all of that information will be in the show notes so that you have access to it, so that you can find out those numbers really quickly and then start to implement them. Megan, thanks again for coming on and making the time. This has been great.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.
And to everyone listening to All Things Private Practice, new episodes are out on every single Saturday on all major platforms and YouTube. Like, download, subscribe, and share. If you haven't gotten your spot to the Scotland Doubt Yourself, Do It Anyway Summit next July, make sure to do that. That's on my website and on social media. Doubt yourself, do it anyway, and we'll see you next week.